The stars had always been cold and silent, but for Captain Daniel Hayes, they held secrets that the galaxy had long forgotten. He stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute, watching the endless darkness through the main viewport. His ship drifted between two dead stars, invisible to every sensor ever created by alien hands. 300 years of hiding had taught humanity many things, and the first lesson was simple: never be seen until you are ready. Daniel was 62 years old, though the treatments kept him looking 40. His hair had turned gray at the temples, and his eyes carried the weight of too many hard decisions. He had commanded the Resolute for 20 years, watching alien empires grow fat and lazy while humanity waited in the shadows. Every day felt like holding his breath. Every night brought dreams of burning ships and screaming colonists stopped behind him. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Morgan worked at the tactical station. She was younger than him by 2 decades, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and a face that rarely showed emotion. She had been born on one of the hidden colonies, raised on stories of the betrayal. Her hatred for the Galactic Concord burned cold and patient, the most dangerous kind. The Galactic Concord ruled 12,000 star systems with absolute authority. 12 species had formed an alliance 100,000 years ago, and they believed themselves the masters of all creation. When humanity first reached the stars 3 centuries past, they sent diplomats with open hands and hopeful hearts. The Concord answered with weapons fire. The Valorian Dominion led the attack. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms, their society built on conquest and slavery. They destroyed the human diplomatic fleet in minutes, then followed the ships back to find Earth's colonies. 2 worlds fell before humanity understood what was happening. Millions were taken as slaves. Millions more died in the bombardment. Earth itself was too far away to reach quickly, hidden on the edge of the galaxy. The Concord declared humans a minor pest and sent a small fleet to finish the job. That fleet never returned. The Concord sent a larger fleet. That one vanished too. After the 5th fleet disappeared without a trace, the Concord decided that humans must have destroyed themselves in desperation. They celebrated the extinction of another primitive species and divided Earth's former territories among themselves. They never thought to look deeper. They never imagined that humanity had simply learned to hide. Daniel turned from the viewport as new data appeared on the main screen. A Concord communication relay had been intercepted, decoded by the quantum processors that human engineers had spent 2 centuries perfecting. The message was simple, but it made his blood run cold. "Captain," Lisa said, her voice tight. They found Sanctuary Prime. Sanctuary Prime was humanity's largest hidden colony, home to 4 billion people. It orbited a brown dwarf star that produced almost no light, invisible to anyone who did not know exactly where to look. For 200 years, it had been safe. Now the Concord had somehow discovered its location. Daniel read the intercepted orders carefully. The Concord Senate had voted unanimously. 12 species, 12 votes, 12 decisions to wipe out every man, woman, and child on Sanctuary Prime. The operation was scheduled to begin in 6 days. How did they find it? He asked. Lisa shook her head. Unknown. A probe might have drifted too close. A communication might have been detected. It does not matter now. She was right. The how no longer mattered. Only the what came next. Daniel pressed a button on his command chair, opening a channel to every department on the ship. "All hands, this is the captain. We have received intelligence that the Concord has discovered Sanctuary Prime. They intend to destroy it. I need all senior officers in the war room in 15 minutes. He closed the channel and looked at Lisa. Her face had not changed, but her hands had curled into fists at her sides. 300 years, she said quietly. 300 years we have waited for this. Daniel nodded. He walked to the war room with slow steps, his mind racing through calculations and contingencies. The Resolute was one of 900 warships that humanity had built in secret, hidden in shipyards carved into asteroids and buried under frozen moons. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering, designed by humans who had never stopped innovating while the Concorde rested on stolen technology they did not understand. The senior officers gathered around the holographic table. Commander Sam Carter, the first officer, stood with his arms crossed. Chief Engineer Maria Santos had grease on her uniform and fire in her eyes. Tactical Officer Lisa Morgan took her place beside the weapons display. Security Chief Greg Palmer leaned against the wall, his hand resting on the sidearm he never removed. Daniel activated the holographic display, showing a map of Concorde space. Red dots marked the locations of human warships, hidden in dark corners throughout the galaxy. Blue dots showed Concorde fleet positions, concentrated around their core worlds. The Concorde believes we are extinct, Daniel said. They have believed this for 3 centuries. In 6 days, they will send a fleet to destroy Sanctuary Prime. We will not allow this. Commander Carter spoke first. What are our orders from High Command? Daniel allowed himself a small smile. High Command has given us authorization for Operation Sunrise. Full decloak. All vessels. The room went silent. Operation Sunrise had been planned for decades, refined and updated as human technology advanced. It was the moment humanity would step out of the shadows and show the galaxy what they had become. Everyone in the room had dreamed of this day. Everyone had also feared it. 900 ships against the entire Concorde, Maria said. Those are interesting odds. Our technology is 3 centuries ahead of theirs, Lisa replied. They have never improved what they stole from the precursors. We have built everything ourselves. Their shields cannot stop our weapons. Their sensors cannot see our ships until we want them to. Their engines cannot match our speed. Greg Palmer pushed off from the wall. And their soldiers cannot match ours. I have trained for this my entire life. My parents trained for it. My grandparents trained for it. We are ready. Daniel looked at each of them in turn. These were good people. They had sacrificed everything, given up normal lives to serve in a fleet that might never fight. Now the moment had arrived, and he saw no fear in their eyes. Only determination. He opened a fleet-wide channel, connecting to all 900 ships scattered across the galaxy. Captains and crew members stopped what they were doing, waiting for his words. All vessels, this is Captain Hayes of the USS Resolute. Authorization code Omega 77. Operation Sunrise is a go. I repeat, Operation Sunrise is a go. Proceed to your assigned coordinates and await my signal. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. For 300 years, we have watched from the darkness. We have learned. We have built. We have prepared. The Concorde believes they killed us long ago. Today, we remind them that humanity does not die easily. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And we are coming. He closed the channel and turned to Lisa. Prepare to decloak on my command. The stars had always been cold and silent, but the silence was about to end. Ambassador Kethra of the Valorian Dominion stood before the Concorde Senate with all 4 arms raised in triumph. Her gray skin gleamed under the artificial lights, and her sharp teeth showed in what her species considered a smile. Around her, representatives of 11 other species listened as she spoke of glory and destiny. The human infestation has been found at last, she announced. Our scouts have located their final hiding place. In 6 days, we shall burn it clean and end their miserable existence forever. The Concorde's victory will be complete. The Senate chamber erupted in approval. Clicking sounds came from the insectoid Kreth. Deep rumbles emerged from the massive Golas delegates. High-pitched whistles rose from the small but vicious Fenari. 12 species, united in their hatred of the primitives who had dared to resist. High Admiral Zornak of the Valorian fleet stood at attention behind Kethra. He was old even by his species standards, with scars across his face from battles fought long ago. He had commanded the original attack on the human colonies 3 centuries past. The memory still brought him pleasure. A junior officer rushed into the chamber, his movements frantic. He whispered something to Zornak, and the Admiral's confident expression shifted to confusion. "What do you mean, appeared?" Zornak demanded aloud. The junior officer pulled up a holographic display. It showed a tactical map of Concord space, and red warning symbols had begun appearing across it. 1, then 5, then 20, then hundreds. Kethra turned from her speech. "What is happening?" Zornak stared at the display with growing horror. "Ships, human ships. They are appearing everywhere." The Senate chamber fell silent. The clicking and rumbling and whistling stopped. Every eye turned to the expanding map of red symbols. "That is impossible," a Fenari delegate squeaked. "Humans are extinct. They have been extinct for 300 years. The display updated again. 347 human warships had now appeared simultaneously across Concord space. They hung in orbit above colony worlds and trade stations and military bases. They simply waited, making no aggressive moves, broadcasting no messages. Zornak recovered his composure quickly. "This changes nothing. Our fleets number in the millions. These primitives cannot hope to challenge us with a few hundred ships." He turned to his communications officer. "Order the second fleet to intercept the nearest human vessels. Show them the price of emerging from their holes." On the edge of Valorian territory, Commander Kevin Shaw watched the second fleet emerge from hyperspace. He stood on the bridge of the USS Harbinger, a ship smaller than his enemy's destroyers, but infinitely more dangerous. 11 other human vessels held formation around him. 12 against 2,000, his pilot muttered. "Fair fight for them." Kevin smiled. He was 35 years old, born on a station hidden inside a gas giant. He had trained for combat since he could walk. His crew had run thousands of simulations, preparing for this exact moment. The Valorian fleet arranged itself into an attack formation. Their commander broadcast on all frequencies, his voice dripping with contempt. "Human vessels, you are outnumbered and outmatched. Surrender immediately, and we may allow some of you to live as slaves. Resist, and you will be destroyed." Kevin pressed the transmit button. "Thank you for the offer. We decline." He nodded to his weapons officer. "Fire at will." The Harbinger's main cannons activated. Beams of energy that human scientists had spent decades perfecting lanced across space at velocities the Valorians could not track. The weapons passed through their shields like they were made of paper. They carved through hull plating that was supposed to withstand nuclear strikes. They did not stop until they had exited through the other side. The first Valorian battleship exploded before its crew even understood what had happened. The second and third followed within seconds. The fourth managed to fire a single volley before it too became a cloud of expanding debris. Kevin watched the destruction with cold satisfaction. "All ships, engage freely. Leave none alive." 12 human vessels danced through the Valorian formation, their engines pushing them faster than enemy targeting computers could follow. Human pilots used neural interfaces that connected their minds directly to their ships, giving them reaction times measured in microseconds. Human weapons fired in patterns calculated by artificial intelligences far beyond anything the Concorde had ever created. The battle lasted 14 minutes. When it ended, 2,000 Valorian warships had ceased to exist. Not a single human vessel had been touched. Commander Kevin Shaw transmitted a brief report to Captain Hayes aboard the Resolute. Second Fleet destroyed. No casualties on our side. Awaiting further orders. Across Concord space, similar reports began flooding in. The Kreth lost 3 fleets in the first hour. The Gorlith lost 2. The Fanari, who had voted most enthusiastically for human extinction, lost their entire home defense force to a single human destroyer that had appeared in their system. Back in the Senate chamber, Ambassador Kethro watched the casualty reports scroll across the displays. The numbers did not make sense. They could not make sense. The Concord had ruled the galaxy for 100,000 years. Their technology was the legacy of the precursors, the ancient race that had seeded life across the stars before vanishing. No one could match them. No one had ever tried. How is this possible? She whispered. High Admiral Zarnak had no answer. He stood frozen, watching his empire's military might crumble in real time. Ships that took decades to build were being destroyed in seconds. Crews that took years to train were dying before they could even report contact with the enemy. A new signal appeared on the main display. A human face looked out at the assembled Senate, calm and cold. Captain Daniel Hayes of the USS Resolute had decided it was time to speak. "Members of the Galactic Concord," he said. 300 years ago, you attacked our diplomatic fleet without provocation. You enslaved our colonies. You murdered our people. You celebrated our extinction." His eyes swept across the chamber, seeming to meet each delegate's gaze. "We were never extinct. We were watching. We were learning. We were building." Behind him, the hologram displayed a map of Concord space. Human warships now held position at every major junction, every supply line, every strategic choke point. The Concord's territory had become a trap. "You thought you were the masters of this galaxy," Daniel continued. "You thought your stolen technology made you invincible. You never bothered to improve it, to understand it, to push beyond what the precursors left behind. You grew lazy and arrogant, convinced that no one could ever challenge your rule." He leaned forward slightly. "We challenge you now. We are humanity. We do not accept slavery. We do not accept extinction. And we do not accept your right to exist as you are." Ambassador Kethra found her voice at last. "What do you want?" Daniel's expression did not change. "I want you to understand something, Ambassador. 300 years ago, we came to you with open hands. We offered peace and friendship and cooperation. You answered with murder. Today, we return your answer." The transmission ended. The Senate chamber sat in stunned silence. High Admiral Zarnak finally spoke, his voice hollow. "Prepare all remaining fleets. Every ship we have. We must stop them before they reach the core worlds." But even as he gave the order, another report arrived. A human fleet had appeared above Valaria Prime itself. The homeworld was surrounded. The reckoning had begun. Dr. Amanda Price had spent her entire life studying the enemy. She worked in a laboratory, hidden beneath the frozen surface of a moon so distant that its sun was just another star in the sky. Her walls were covered with diagrams and equations. Her tables held fragments of Concord technology, captured during the initial betrayal 3 centuries ago. And her mind held the truth that would reshape the galaxy. She was 53 years old, with silver-streaked brown hair and eyes that had grown tired from staring at screens. Her hands were steady as she assembled her final report, the one that Captain Hayes had requested before the fleet decloaked. Now the galaxy was learning what she had known for decades. The Concord had never invented anything. Amanda transmitted her findings to the USS Resolute, where it was broadcast to every human vessel and every hidden colony. The truth spread like fire through dry grass. 100,000 years ago, a species called the Precursors had ruled the galaxy. They built wonders beyond imagination, ships that could cross the stars in hours, Weapons that could shatter planets, shields that could stop suns. Then they vanished, leaving only ruins and mysteries behind. The 12 species of the Concorde had stumbled upon these ruins at different times. They learned to use what they found. They learned to copy it, but they never learned to understand it. Their scientists could activate precursor machines, but they could not explain how those machines worked. Their engineers could repair precursor technology, but they could not improve upon it. For 100,000 years, the Concorde had rested on stolen power. They believed they were the masters of creation because they sat in the chairs of giants. They never thought to build their own chairs. Humanity was different. When the first human scientists examined captured Concorde technology, they did not see magic. They saw engineering. Complex engineering, certainly, but still bound by the laws of physics. They took the machines apart. They studied every component. They asked questions that no Concorde scientist had asked in millennia. Why does this work? How could it work better? What else is possible? 300 years of asking those questions had produced miracles. Amanda watched the battle reports flowing across her screen. Human weapons were not copies of precursor designs. They were entirely new creations, built from principles that the precursors themselves had never explored. Human shields did not block energy. They redirected it into other dimensions. Human engines did not push ships through space. They folded space around the ships. Human sensors did not look for light or radiation. They detected the ripples that matter made in the fabric of reality itself. The Concorde had spent 100,000 years going nowhere. Humanity had spent 300 years running as fast as possible, and they had left their enemies far behind. Captain Daniel Hayes contacted Amanda directly, his face appearing on her personal screen. Behind him, the bridge of the Resolute buzzed with activity. "Doctor, I am about to address the Concorde Senate again. I would like you to explain our technology to them. Help them understand why they have already lost." Amanda nodded. "I will join the transmission. But Daniel, you should know something else." "What is it?" "I have been analyzing Concorde population data. They kept records of every species they encountered and destroyed. In 100,000 years, they have eliminated 437 intelligent species across the galaxy. We are not the first they tried to exterminate. We are simply the first who fought back effectively." Daniel's expression hardened. 437 species. All gone, all gone. The Kreth alone are responsible for the extinction of 82 civilizations. The Valorians have erased 47. Every member of the Concorde has blood on their hands. Daniel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "Include that information in your presentation. The galaxy should know what kind of creatures they had allowed to rule them." The transmission to the Concorde Senate began minutes later. Ambassador Kethra and the other delegates watched from their chamber, surrounded by guards who no longer believed they could provide protection. High Admiral Zornak stood rigid, his 4 hands clenched at his sides. Captain Hayes spoke first. "You have had time to see what our ships can do. Now you will learn why." Amanda appeared beside him on the hologram. She spoke clearly and simply, as she had practiced for years. "The Galactic Concorde has never created its own technology. Everything you use, every ship you fly, every weapon you fire, is a copy of precursor designs that are 100,000 years old. You have maintained this technology. You have even learned to reproduce it. But you have never improved it." She displayed a comparison on the screen. A Concorde weapon design sat beside a human weapon design. The differences were stark. Your plasma cannons generate temperatures of 50,000 degrees and fire at 12% the speed of light. Our beam weapons operate at 400 million degrees and reach 97% light speed. Your shields can absorb 600 terajoules of energy before failing. Ours can absorb effectively unlimited energy because we do not absorb it at all. We send it elsewhere. The Concorde delegates stared at the numbers without comprehension. They had never thought in terms of comparison. They had never needed to. Your engines can propel a battleship at 15 times the speed of light through hyperspace. Ours move at 11,000 times light speed through a form of transit you cannot detect or interrupt. Your sensors can identify a ship at 3 light hours. Ours can identify a ship at 300 light years. Ambassador Kethra interrupted. This is impossible. The precursors were the most advanced species ever to exist. Nothing could surpass them. Amanda shook her head. The precursors were remarkable, but they were not perfect. They made choices about how to approach physics and engineering. Different choices were possible. Humanity made different choices. She brought up another display, showing a timeline. 300 years ago, we were a primitive species just learning to travel between stars. Today, we are more advanced than the precursors ever were. In another 300 years, we will be beyond anything you can imagine. That is the difference between a species that innovates and a species that stagnates. High Admiral Zarnak stepped forward, his voice harsh. Words and displays mean nothing. We still have millions of ships. We still have trillions of soldiers. We will crush you through sheer numbers. Daniel answered him calmly. Your fleets have already lost over 8,000 vessels in the first day of fighting. Our losses stand at 0. If you wish to continue sending ships against us, we will continue destroying them. The mathematics are not in your favor, Admiral. Then we will fight to the last ship, Zornik snarled. The Valorian people will never surrender. I did not ask you to surrender, Daniel replied. I asked you to understand. 3 centuries ago, your people attacked innocent diplomats. You enslaved our colonies. You murdered children in their beds. You did this not because we threatened you, but because you could. Because you believed we were too weak to matter. He paused, and his eyes found Kethros. We are not weak anymore. We are not helpless anymore. And we remember everything. The transmission ended. Amanda gathered her notes and prepared for the next phase. The truth had been revealed. Now came the consequences. Across Concorde space, human warships held their positions. They did not advance. They did not attack. They simply waited, letting the truth sink in. The Concorde had ruled through fear for 100,000 years. Now they were learning what fear truly felt like. The Galactic Concorde began to fracture within hours of the truth being revealed. Species that had stood together for 100,000 years now looked at each other with suspicion and fear. The strong bonds of shared conquest had become chains that dragged them toward a common doom. The Fenari were the first to break. Their ambassador rushed to contact Captain Hayes before the day ended, offering complete surrender and cooperation. They would reveal the locations of every human still held in slavery. They would pay reparations. They would do anything to avoid the fate they had visited upon so many others. We accept your surrender, Daniel told them. Release all human prisoners immediately. Our ships will collect them. Any Fenari who harms a human from this moment forward will ensure the destruction of your species. The Fenari agreed without hesitation. Within hours, transport ships were landing on Fenari worlds, and human captives who had been born into bondage were walking free for the first time in their lives. The Kreth followed next, then the Gorlith. 3 of the 12 Concorde species chose survival over pride. They handed over their human slaves, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, and withdrew their fleets to their home systems. Human ships watched them closely but made no aggressive moves. 2 smaller species, the Veth and the Irani, attempted to flee beyond the galactic rim. They gathered their populations onto colony ships and ran for the empty darkness between galaxies. Human vessels let them go. There was no need to chase those who removed themselves from the conflict. But the Valorian Dominion made a different choice. High Admiral Zarnak stood before his people and declared that surrender was death. He broadcast his message to every Valorian world, every ship, every soldier. The humans want revenge, he said. They will not stop with our fleets. They will not stop with our leaders. They will destroy everything we are. Our only hope is to fight. Gather every ship. Call every reserve. We will make our stand at Valoria Prime, and we will show these primitives that we are not afraid to die. 50,000 Valorian warships answered the call. They came from every corner of Dominion space, leaving colonies undefended, abandoning outposts, stripping garrison forces to nothing. Every vessel that could fly made its way to the homeworld. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Torres watched them gather from the bridge of the USS Vengeance. He was 30 years old, with dark eyes and a scar across his jaw from a training accident. He had been born on Kepler Station, one of the colonies that the Valorians had enslaved 3 centuries ago. His parents had worked in their mines until their bodies gave out. His grandparents had died in the initial attack. The Vengeance was an assault carrier, holding 300 fighter craft and 2,000 Marines. It was one of 40 human ships that had taken position around Valoria Prime. Watching the enemy fleet assemble, Captain Hayes contacted Ryan directly. Commander Torres, I want you to lead the assault wing. Tactical command of all fighter operations during the battle. Ryan nodded. Understood, Captain. What are our rules of engagement? The Valorians have chosen to fight. They have refused surrender. They have refused negotiation. Every ship in their fleet is a valid target. Destroy them all. Yes, sir. The battle began at dawn on Valoria Prime. Not that the time mattered in space, but the Valorians had chosen the moment for symbolic purposes. They believed that attacking with their sun behind them would provide some advantage. It did not. 50,000 Valorian ships surged forward in a massive wave. Their weapons fired in coordinated volleys, filling space with plasma and missiles and kinetic rounds. The barrage was impressive. It was also pointless. Human fighters launched from their carriers, small craft piloted by men and women whose neural interfaces made them one with their machines. They dodged through the incoming fire with perfect precision, their movements too fast for Valorian targeting systems to track. Then they struck. Ryan Torres flew at the head of the first wave. His fighter was an extension of his body, responding to his thoughts faster than any physical control could manage. He selected targets through his neural link and fired without conscious thought. Valorian destroyers exploded around him, their shields useless against weapons designed to ignore them. All wings, maintain formation, he ordered. Priority targets are their carriers and command ships. Cut off their head, and the body will fall. The human fighters carved through the Valorian fleet like scalpels through flesh. Behind them, the larger human warships added their own firepower. Beam weapons that burned at millions of degrees sliced through battleships. Missiles that traveled through folded space appeared inside enemy vessels before detonating. Electronic warfare systems crashed. Valorian computers and left their ships blind and deaf. High Admiral Zoranak watched from the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory. Around him, his officers reported catastrophe after catastrophe. The fleet was dying. Ships were vanishing from the tactical display faster than the computers could update. Focus all fire on their lead carrier, he ordered. The one launching the fighters. Destroy it and we cut off their attack wing. Every remaining Valorian ship turned its weapons toward the USS Vengeance. Thousands of plasma bolts and missiles converged on Ryan's mothership. Commander Katie Wells, captain of the Vengeance, did not flinch. All power to shields. Redirect incoming energy to auxiliary batteries. The barrage struck. Any Concorde vessel would have been vaporized instantly. The Vengeance absorbed the energy, channeled it through systems the Valorians could not understand, and used it to power an even more devastating counterattack. The ship's main cannon fired once, and the eternal victory ceased to exist. High Admiral Zornak died without understanding what had killed him. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, 49,712 Valorian warships had been destroyed. Human losses were 4 fighters damaged. No fatalities. Ryan Torres landed his fighter in the Vengeance's hangar bay and sat in the cockpit for a long moment, breathing slowly. He had dreamed of this day since childhood. He had imagined it would bring him joy or satisfaction or peace. Instead, he felt empty. His communication screen lit up with Captain Hayes' face. Commander Torres. Outstanding work. Prepare your Marines for ground deployment. We are taking Valoria Prime. Yes, sir. Human dropships descended through the atmosphere of the Valorian homeworld. The ground defenses fired everything they had, but it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. Marines in powered armor walked through cities that had stood for 50,000 years, and the Valorian soldiers who tried to stop them fell like leaves. The planetary government surrendered within 6 hours. The remaining Concorde species watched the broadcasts in horror, seeing their mightiest member brought low in a single day. Captain Hayes walked through the shattered throne room of the Valorian Emperor, his boots crunching on broken glass. The Emperor himself knelt in chains before him, his forearms bound, his gray skin pale with terror. 300 years ago, Daniel said quietly, your ancestors made a choice. They chose to attack us instead of talking to us. They chose slavery instead of trade. They chose murder instead of peace. He looked down at the kneeling Emperor. Today, you face the consequences of that choice. Not because we are cruel, not because we enjoy this, but because the galaxy must learn that some choices have costs that can never be escaped. The Emperor's execution was broadcast to every world in former Concorde space. The choice had been made. The price had been paid. 1 year after the decloaking, the galaxy had become unrecognizable. The Galactic Concorde was dissolved, its name erased from official records, its symbols torn down from government buildings across 12,000 worlds. In its place rose the Terran Accords, a new framework for interstellar civilization, built on principles that the old order had never considered. No species would be enslaved. No world would be destroyed without just cause. No civilization would be exterminated for the convenience of another. These were the laws that humanity wrote into the foundation of their new order, and they enforced them with the same cold efficiency they had shown in battle. Captain Daniel Hayes retired from active service 6 months after the war ended. He had given 4 decades of his life to the fleet, watching and waiting and preparing for a day that many believed would never come. Now that day had passed, and he found himself without purpose. He returned to Sanctuary Prime, the colony world he had helped save. The planet had grown in the years since its discovery by the Concorde. Billions of people now called it home, living in cities carved into canyon walls and floating on synthetic platforms above toxic seas. It was not a beautiful world, but it was a safe one. Daniel built a small house on the edge of a cliff overlooking an acid ocean. The view was strange, but peaceful. He spent his mornings reading reports from across the galaxy and his afternoons sitting on his porch, watching the green waves crash against the rocks below. He had promised his late wife that he would build this house someday. She had died 30 years ago, killed in a training accident that should never have happened. They had never had children. He had devoted himself entirely to the fleet after her death, channeling his grief into the work of preparing humanity for war. Now the war was over, and he was alone, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Morgan took command of the USS Resolute after Daniel's retirement. She led patrols through former Concorde space, showing the flag and reminding everyone that humanity remained watchful. The job suited her. She had never wanted anything but to serve. Commander Kevin Shaw was promoted to captain and given command of a new vessel, the USS Guardian. He patrolled the border regions where former Concorde species still looked at humans with hatred in their eyes. There were incidents, small skirmishes, and assassination attempts, and occasional acts of sabotage. Kevin handled them with the same calm efficiency he had shown in battle. Dr. Amanda Price became the head of the Terran Science Council, responsible for deciding which technologies would be shared with former Concorde species and which would remain human secrets. It was a delicate balance. Too much sharing would strengthen potential enemies. Too little would breed resentment and fear. She chose to share medical technology first. Human doctors had developed treatments for diseases that had plagued other species for millennia. They offered these treatments freely, asking nothing in return. It was a small gesture, but it planted seeds of goodwill that would grow over time. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Torres left the military entirely. He had found no peace in the destruction of the Valorian fleet, no healing in the conquest of their homeworld. The ghosts of his parents still haunted his dreams, and no amount of revenge could bring them back. He settled on a small colony world at the edge of human space, where he could be alone with his thoughts. He grew vegetables in a modest garden and helped his neighbors repair their homes when storms damaged them. Some days he felt almost normal. Other days, the weight of what he had done pressed down on him until he could barely breathe. The younger species of the galaxy watched humanity with complicated emotions. The Phanari, who had surrendered quickly, became the most enthusiastic supporters of the new order. They integrated human technology into their society and sent their children to study at human universities. Within a generation, they had transformed themselves from conquered people into valued partners. The Krath and Gorlath adapted more slowly. They had been among the most aggressive members of the old Concorde, and their people struggled to accept a galaxy where they were no longer the hunters. Some embraced the change. Others retreated to their homeworlds and refused all contact with outsiders. The Valorians, who survived their empire's fall, scattered across the galaxy as refugees. Most of them settled on marginal worlds where no one else wanted to live. They kept to themselves, speaking their own language and maintaining their own customs. The hatred between them and humanity would not fade for many generations. Dr. Amanda Price addressed the first interspecies summit 1 year after the decloaking. Representatives from 47 species attended, including many who had been subjugated by the Concorde and freed by humanity. They gathered in a vast hall on Sanctuary Prime, sitting in chairs designed for a dozen different body types. Amanda stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled delegates. She was not a politician or a diplomat. She was a scientist who had spent her life understanding why things worked the way they did. But someone had to speak for humanity, and she had been chosen. "You have questions," she began. "You want to know how a species so young and small became so powerful. You want to know why we did what we did. You want to know what we intend to do next." She paused, gathering her thoughts. 300 years ago, humanity was nearly destroyed. We were attacked without warning by those who considered us beneath contempt. We lost millions of lives. We lost 2 colonies. We lost our innocence. She let the words settle before continuing. In the aftermath, we had a choice. We could accept our fate and fade into extinction, as so many species had done before us. Or we could fight. Not with the weapons we had, which were insufficient, but with the weapons we could build if we dedicated ourselves completely to survival. She gestured to the ceiling, beyond which the stars waited. You see the results around you. Human ships patrol these space lanes. Human technology powers these lights. Human soldiers stand guard outside these doors. We have become exactly what we needed to become to survive. A delegate from one of the freed species raised a tentacle. What prevents you from becoming what the Concord was? You have the power to rule through fear, to enslave, to destroy. Why should we trust you? Amanda smiled, though there was sadness in it. You should not trust us completely. Trust must be earned over time, through actions, not promises. But I can tell you what drives humanity. It is not the desire for conquest or domination. It is the memory of what was done to us and the determination that it will never happen again, to anyone. She looked directly at the questioning delegate. The Concord saw weakness in others and exploited it. We see weakness in others and remember our own. We remember what it felt like to be helpless. We remember the ships burning and the colonies falling and the children crying. We will not allow that to happen to another species if we can prevent it. The hall fell silent. Amanda let the silence stretch for a long moment. We do not ask you to love us or admire us. We ask only that you give us the chance to prove ourselves through our actions. Watch what we do. Judge us by our deeds. And if we ever betray the principles we have proclaimed, you will be right to stand against us. She stepped back from the podium. The delegates began to talk among themselves, their voices mixing in a dozen languages. Some were skeptical. Some were hopeful. All were uncertain about what the future would bring. In the front row, Captain Daniel Hayes sat quietly, watching the proceedings. He had been invited as a guest of honor, but had refused to speak. His fighting days were over. The galaxy's future belonged to those who came after him. Above Sanctuary Prime, unseen but ever present, human warships maintained their silent vigil. They would continue to watch for as long as necessary. They would continue to protect those who could not protect themselves. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The Concord had tried to exterminate humanity and had found extinction themselves. Other species would remember this lesson for generations, perhaps forever. Humanity had survived. Humanity had prevailed. And humanity would make certain that the stars never forgot what happened when someone pushed too hard. The silence of space continued, as it always had. But now that silence held a different meaning, it was the silence of a galaxy at peace.